According to information provided by The Economist, the crime rate in most of Europe is rapidly declining, but there are exceptions to this rule. Christian Pfeiffer, head of the Research Institute for Criminology of Lower Saxony in Hanover, suggests that the accession to the European Union of a number of Eastern European countries, 8 countries joined the EU in 2004, and Bulgaria and Romania joined the EU in 2007, whose citizens were provided with full freedom of movement in the countries of the coalition, created favorable conditions for the growth of criminal syndicates and the spread of their influence on Western Europe. Typically, gangs and criminal groups are associated with the United States. They are a consequence of things like the passage of the Second Amendment, gun culture, poverty, racism, problems in the education system, and other dire social conditions. But do not forget that similar problems exist in other countries. As soon as the citizens of the newly minted EU member states gained access to free movement, the significant gap between the socially disadvantaged environment of these countries and other EU countries became more noticeable. A stream of criminals poured into the civilized cities of Europe in search of a better life. But do not forget about the local gangs, which have nothing to do with the entry into the European Union of the countries of Eastern Europe, which have reigned here since the 18th century. Below you will find a list of the 7 most dangerous European gangs to date. 7. 36 Boys, Germany. According to some reports, the number of Turks in Germany is more than 3 million people. Issues of cultural diversity and immigrant integration have been widely contested in recent decades. Since the 1980s, there has been a massive increase in racist clashes, directed mainly against Turkish communities. This led to the fact that many teenagers, the children of Turkish immigrants, gathered in groups for the purpose of self-defense. The 36 Boys gang was active throughout the 1980s and 1990s. It consisted predominantly of Turkish immigrants living in the Berlin-Kreuzberg area. During its heyday, the group included up to 400 people. The name of the gang came about for a reason. It was based on the Berlin postal code Südost 36. They were involved in skirmishes with local gangs such as Nazis, skinheads, and warriors. The band disbanded in the mid-90s. 6. British Yardies. Originally, the word Yardie meant the name of the poor neighborhoods in Trenchtown, Jamaica, which were built as temporary housing after the destruction caused by the hurricane. When in the 1950s most of the population of the Caribbean went to England to work, they were given this name, denoting immigrants with a low financial situation, who, subsequently, were involved in various gang wars in the black neighborhoods of London. A gang called the Yardies were involved in drug trafficking, marijuana and cocaine, and arms trafficking. The gang does not have any hierarchical structure and leaders. In 1993, the Yardies were blamed for the death of police officer Patrick Dunn, and in the early 2000s they were involved in bloody skirmishes in Bristol with the local Aggie crew. 5. Saltsevskaya Brodva, Russia. Founded by Sergei Mikhailov, Saltsevskaya Brodva began its activities in the 1980s. By controlling strategic transportation hubs, the gang has made a name for itself in the world of foreign car imports. For many years, the Saltsevskis were led by the criminal genius Semyon Mogilevic and the famous thief Zenel Kochidze, whose name was known in wide circles of criminal authorities throughout Europe. Sergei Mikhailov, who positioned himself more as a businessman than a mafia, changed the group's tactics in the 90s and turned his gaze to the banking sector. This allowed them not only to launder money, but also to become closer to the most famous Russian oligarchs. To date, the Saltsevskaya Brodva is involved in almost any major case related to the criminal world of Russia. They are engaged in racketeering, extortion, money laundering, fraud, arms and human trafficking, hacking. This organization is believed to play an important role in the international cocaine trade, maintaining links with the Colombian drug cartels. 4. French Connection, Marseille, France. Marseille has long been dubbed South Chicago. This city has become a real center of organized crime and gangs, the most legendary of which is the gang French Connection. The gang ran a network of laboratories for the production of heroin, supplied to the country from Turkey after the Second World War. By the end of the 1960s, 80% of all heroin shipped to the US came from Marseille, and in 1971 the city was immortalized in the film The French Connection, starring Gene Hackman. And although at the moment Marseille is no longer the heroin capital of the world, the main route for marijuana and cocaine traffickers from South America runs through it. According to The Guardian, the French government held an emergency meeting in 2013 over a string of brutal murders in Marseille that also targeted the son of one of the country's football bosses. And even despite the absence of big names of the past among the leaders of this group today, they still rule over the city. 3. Camorra, Italy. The Camorra is a crime syndicate that originated in the Campania region of Italy in the 18th century. Unlike the Sicilian mafia, the Camorra does not have a centralized leadership. This organization includes about 111 different clans, each of which operates independently of each other. According to information provided by journalist Roberto Saviano, the Camorra is the most powerful and brutal division of the Italian mafia. The territory of influence of the Camorra extends to Lombardy, Piedmont, Tuscany, and the region of Emilia-Romagna. Separate units of this group have taken root in the UK and the USA. 2. Gypsy gangs. The Roma, also known as the Gypsies, have lived in Eastern Europe for centuries. The accession of a number of countries in this region to the EU has caused a massive influx of gypsies in cities such as Paris, London, and Dublin. Most of them were unemployed, living in tents on the outskirts of cities. Despite the fact that most Roma suffer unfairly from prejudice and discrimination, this does not negate the fact that among them there are many professional thieves who work on the city streets of popular European cities. According to the Daily Mail, gypsy gangs have infested Paris. They usually target ATM customers. In 2011, a gang of 27 Roma were accused of committing more than 100 crimes in France, Belgium, and Germany. They used children under the age of 10 as their tools. 1. Pink Panthers. According to the American television magazine 60 Minutes, the Pink Panthers are the largest and one of the most successful gangster organizations specializing in the theft of diamonds. They are credited with 370 robberies worth over $500 million. This is a large criminal network, which for the most part includes former military Yugoslavs, participants in the Bosnian War. The Pink Panthers are known for their professional planning and excellent military discipline. Over the past 20 years, Interpol has identified more than 800 members of this group, but only a few of them have been caught. The Pink Panthers are responsible for robberies in 35 countries around the world. Their brazen antics have become a real legend and inspire thousands of imitators throughout Europe.